Hey folks, we are back at iamdeveloper.live. I'm your host, Nick Taylor, and today I'm hanging out with Yuri. I didn't read your last name before the stream, so I'm not going to pronounce it right now.
That's
but
fine.
is it Strumpflohner?
Oh, that's perfect. Best
Okay,
ever.
okay.
That's
All
awesome.
right, all right, okay. I wasn't sure. Is there supposed to be an umlaut on the O or no?
No, it's fine. It's exactly like that.
Okay.
It's a German name, so
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for joining me, Yuri. For folks who might not know who you are and what you do you mind just kind of giving folks a little explainer of who Yuri is?
yeah, sure. I'm Yuri from northern Italy, based in Europe, middle of the Alps. I work now since over 3 years at NX, doing a
Okay.
bunch of different things there, consulting with clients, working on NX itself. Most recently, I'm more on the DevRel content production side, so we're trying to push that much more heavily. Yeah, I blog a lot, yuri.dev. I'm currently rewriting my blog. Hopefully, should be
Okay.
done soon. Oh, and if you want to follow along, we just talked about before. I'm also starting to stream or started to stream on my own channel, which is Yuri, like twitch.tv/YuriDev, everything together. So
Yeah, I dropped that for folks if they want to check that out.
cool.
And yeah, so we're gonna talk about NX today, and I'm pretty excited to talk about this because I'm not super familiar with it. I have some kind of knowledge about it, so I'm excited to talk about this. For folks who might not know what NX is, could you kind of just give the I guess the elevator pitch of what NX is?
Yeah. So NX is basically a developer tool. So it's based on a CLI tool. It is a CLI tool, right? And we have some extensions on top of it that make it easier to work with it. But at the essential part, it helps you like automate your code base, scale your code base. And when you mention
Okay.
scaling, like there's also monorepos around because that's where you usually need like faster builds, quicker builds, things like caching, parallelization, all that type of stuff. And so we
Yeah.
came basically out of that monorepo space and then started basically then expanding from there. Which we might jump a bit
Okay.
into it, like as your title says, also like standalone apps. Like, what is that? We can
Yeah.
briefly also touch on that, and then expand from there. See
Yeah.
where it can go.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great explainer. Yeah, because we were kind of talking about this before the stream, but my impression initially from not having known completely what the tool does was I thought it was just a monorepo tool like npm workspaces and so on. So, and as I've read a little bit, and we're definitely going to dig into all this stuff. It's really there's lots of tooling in there to do a lot of powerful things, not just monorepos, but like you were saying, I think you said it's something that's fairly new, the standalone app support
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we can look at.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's
yeah,
it's basically it's different layers if you want, because like you're not completely wrong. Like when you talk about like npm pnpm workspaces, because those are I see
mhm,
like those are the minimum kind of monorepo setups that you can have, which are now baked into the actual package managers, right? Where they have those workspace properties, and so you can easily
yeah,
locally link packages. But that's then also mostly it. They usually have some filtering capabilities and stuff where like it makes it easier for you to run. I don't know, tests and builds and links, whatever scripts you want to run across many packages. So they have
yeah,
functionalities like that. But then that's almost it, right? And for some use case, that's perfectly fine. So you just stop
yeah,
there and that's it, and then get it going, right? And then you could start like adding in an X, for instance, which is at a super like thin level, if you want, where it really
okay,
just integrates into an existing PnPM workspace. So you don't have to change anything there. And it just makes your runs, like the task scheduling itself, smarter and faster, right? So I feel like
okay,
that's the base layer, if you want, when you use NX in such a context. And many people actually do because they have an existing
okay,
reality and they just want to drop it in for the speed aspect because at some point their monorepo becomes slow and doesn't scale anymore. So
yeah, okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I I guess I guess I'm kind of curious, like, how did NX come about? Because was it that you saw there were things lacking in existing tooling? Like, so, like I mentioned before, there's npm workspaces. There is Lerna, which the NX team or Narwhal is shepherding as well now,
yep, that's
and
last year.
and then there's obviously other stuff like Turbo Repo.
Yep.
I'm not sure if there's other tooling, but yeah, I guess my main question is, did you see there was something missing in that space, and that's I'm assuming that's why NX came about, or
Yeah. So NX actually started, I think, like 5 years ago already. So it's been quite a while that we have been around. But
okay,
yeah, the founders like Jeff and Victor, they were part of the Angular team, and so they worked at Google. And what
okay,
they say, like Google is kind of known for the monorepos. Like when you talk about monorepos, gigantic monorepos, usually Google comes into mind, right? And like also Meta,
yeah,
and like I think even Twitter has some large monorepos there in action. Apparently,
okay,
who knows nowadays?
yeah, yeah,
but but basically, so they saw like the productivity they got like within Google working on such monorepos, and so when they left the Angular team, they kind of took along some of those ideas and built it as an open source project, basically, because
okay,
there was Bazel around, which is kind of the equivalent of Google's internal Blaze framework, right, for handling monorepos.
okay,
But the thing is, like Bazel works super nice and super powerful, but it's hard to set up, right? And so the
okay,
idea was like have something that works, especially around the JavaScript front end area, right? Front end
mhm,
ecosystem, and have something that works, but it's easy to set up. So you don't need like a dedicated, I don't know, team basically just handling the tooling for you, right? So that you can
okay,
get working. So that was the main idea. And
okay,
there also the idea was to give a complete experience. So not something where you need to set up a whole lot of things yourself, but like you can like get a pre-configured state very quickly, right? And so that's also why
okay,
NX started with the whole plugins and that type of stuff and code generation, and so which was also highly
okay.
kind of inspired by the Angular CLI in the end.
Okay, okay, gotcha, gotcha. And I guess like you were saying in terms of Bazel, I've never used Bazel, but I think Turbo Repo is inspired by Bazel and some stuff from NX. I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah,
I just
the ideas
remember.
are yeah, the ideas are pretty similar in general. Like if because if you talk about monorepos, then the thing is about speed, right? Task scheduling, which then immediately comes speed, then comes caching and those type of things, right? And so if you
Okay,
look at
yeah,
the current landscape, most like I would say like reasonable monorepo tools, like useful monorepo tools, have those baked in some fashion, right?
yeah,
And we actually, it's interesting because like at NX, I think like half year ago, we tried to kind of classify the monorepo tools as more and more came out, right? Because as
mhm,
you mentioned before, like you have PNPM workspaces, right? Or NPM workspace or Yarn workspace, like that type of
yeah,
built-in package manager kind of thing. Then you have things like Lerna. Then there came Turbo Repo, right? Then there's NX, then there's Base, like, and so, but they all are in the monorepo space, but they cover different amounts, different areas if you want, right? So
okay,
what we try to do is like kind of divide and classify them a bit more just for giving people a better understanding. And so we named them integrated monorepos and package-based monorepos. So naming is super
okay.
hard, by the way. So we kind of
Yes, yes,
thought for a
yes.
whole lot of like, how do you name that stuff? And the
Yeah,
main reason is because like a package-based, for instance, if you look at that, and you can see more about that, by the way, on our website as well, like on annex.dev, the docs.
okay,
Package-based, therefore, because a lot of the tooling like Lerna that has also been around for like ages already,
mhm,
and then Turbo Repo, and or just bare bones PM, Yarn, and PM workspace, like those usually operate or became important or kind of popular for creating packages in a monorepo and then publishing them to npm. That type of
yeah,
scenario, right? And because if you look at, for instance, the current frameworks like Angular, React, Vue, Vue, they all
mhm,
work in a monorepo base. You see always that packages folder and a bunch of packages within
yeah,
that, right? And so they all have a sort of monorepo setup, whether that's just Yarn Workspace or something like that, or
mhm,
like some tooling on top, basically. And so NX could always do that as well, right? So you can just drop it in and just does task scheduling on those package-based monorepos for being quick on building and linting them and then publishing them to npm. But then there's the
yeah,
whole other side of things where what's usually happening within organizations, where they're not necessarily just publishing packages, but they're building entire apps that they want to have in a monorepo and share code and stuff,
yeah,
right? And so that involves usually a lot more in terms of what you want to get, right? And so that's where
okay,
we call them integrated monorepos, where NX falls in and Bazel falls in, for instance, because they provide much more than just fast task scheduling and caching and that type of thing, right?
okay,
And so that's
okay, gotcha.
what was our attempt basically to kind of categorize them a bit more.
Okay. And I'm curious about we're definitely going to dig into NX shortly, but uh, I'm curious about like not acquiring Lerna, but like basically becoming the maintainers of Lerna. because like you said, they cover different spaces potentially. So I'm curious because like I think you can use, because like NX is more than just Monorepos port, like we said. So like you can have Lerna in NX, I think. Oh, we lost you for a sec there, Yuri. He'll be back in a second, hopefully. He was mentioning that his internet was a little spotty. So hopefully he comes back in a minute. But yeah, I'll just kind of quickly mention. So yeah, Lerna was well, it's still an open source project, and basically, I forget when it happened, but the NX team decided to take it over. Hey, you're right. Okay. Let me just make sure you're back in the screen. Oh, yeah, you're back in the screen. Cool, cool. Yeah. It's okay. I did origami.
Just a sec.
Okay. Cool.
I'm wondering.
Well, while you're sorting that out, I'll just keep talking to the folks for a sec. So, but yeah,
Let me just reload.
Okay. Cool, cool. This is the beauty of live streaming. It's one of the reasons why I do like it, is because it's never expected to be perfect. So here's sometimes the internet's got to be, so-so internet.
Right. Now I should be back. I can hear you again.
Okay. You hear me okay now?
It was weird.
Okay,
Out of a sudden, I didn't see you anymore. I just like saw myself on the big screen. So
yeah. I guess the internet went down for a second or something. But yeah, anyways, I was just kind of ad-libbing talking about Lerna. So like, yeah, what I was saying was like, the NX team or Narwhal became the maintainers of Lerna, and that's just, it was the reason for that. Well, one, it's nice to help out open source for sure, but I'm curious about like Lerna and NX coexisting. Like, is kind of the goal to migrate people to NX over time, or is it to just allow them to just stay with Lerna and integrate into NX, like using other tools in NX, or kind of curious of what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, we don't have clear plans in the sense of like, does Lerna vanish at some point? Right now, absolutely not. Right. So our thing was more, we saw Lerna kind of obsolete, and that already happened like even like 2 years before the whole, like, if you want us taking over stewardship happened, and NX. We even had a migration path, an easy migration path, where you could just replace Lerna with an X and it would work, right? Very like low invasive kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was also the reason why when we then saw the whole thing pop up again, because there was that famous PR where someone said like, hey, please put on your README that this is a deprecated tool, not maintained anymore, right? So that's when the whole like discussion flamed up again. And so mostly Jeff, one of the co-founders of Now and the Next, like he said like, hey, what if we just kept on maintaining it, because we have already a replacement, a migration path for it working, and so in the end, it is Lerna is basically similar to what NX does already, like maybe a little less advanced, because it didn't have like more evolved task scheduling and all that caching type of stuff, right? And so Victor kind of took a look, like just to evaluate before we reached out to the maintainers to see like what would be the effort on our side, because at the same time we didn't want to derail from like focusing on an X, obviously building an X, right? But on the other side, then it was super easy to just have an X as the third option of running tasks in Lerna, because Lerna already deferred, which a lot of people actually don't know. Like Lerna didn't run a task themselves, but they used like some third-party NPM packages to do the task scheduling. Right?
Oh, okay.
And so what we did is basically simply do some minor adjustments on an X and make an X a task scheduling machine, basically for Lerna, right? An engine. And so you could just plug it in and flip it on with a flag. That's it, right? And so, because we had also clients that had used Lerna, and migrating away from a repo that you have for years and years, right, was kind of tough. And so it made sense for us. Now we have actually 2 people full-time working just on Lerna from our team, which kind of push it forward, added like the whole task scheduling with an X, caching and all that sort of stuff. So nowadays it's almost it's a perfectly modern solution. And people still love it, because one thing that Lerna does well is publishing. That's still something.
I wasn't aware. I've never used Lerna. I think I might have cloned a repo at one point, and then it had Lerna, but all I knew was it was for mono repos, because I think it was one of the first big
Yeah.
monorepo projects. I think it was like Jamie Kyle and was it
Yeah.
Sebastian
Yeah,
from
exactly.
6 to 5 Babel? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
I remember.
before like the whole npm yarn PNPM workspace existed, right? So there was no
Yeah.
way to easy doing local linking of packages, and so that's why Learner fit in, right? And so yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, no,
it's been around for a while.
that's a good thing to bring up, like npm link or pnpm link, I guess too. Like that that always seemed clunky, so it's really nice when you're in a mono repo now. Like I've noticed that because when I first set up an npm workspace, I didn't know that it was going to do that. And that was super nice because then I could just reference my packages right away in my other
Exactly.
package. And
Yeah.
it was auto linked, which was like kind of chef's kiss for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's super cool. Okay, awesome. We got a bit of history about mono repos there and stuff. Do you want to we can maybe just dig into NX itself? Like maybe just open up a project and well, I guess start a project from scratch, I should say. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and switch this to pairing view here for a second. Okay, so I'm in VS Code, literally nothing happening yet. I'm just gonna go to my streams folder. Oh yeah, this would help if I type properly. Okay, dev. All right. So if I wanted to get started with NX today, like I'm creating a brand new project, how do I go about starting things?
Yeah, there's basically a package that can like generate that initial setup, and so you
Okay.
could run npx create dash nx dash workspace. Exactly. I usually apply latest, but that should be fine if
Oh,
you don't
okay.
have another
Yeah.
version of it. It's the latest one. Perfect. So it
Okay,
installs
cool.
15.8.1, which is out basically since 2
Okay.
days. So it's brand new. We didn't even release the blog post yet. So people got the first view right in this stream here. And so
Okay,
here it
awesome.
already asks you a couple of different questions, right? Because as you mentioned before, like you can set up like those simple package-based monorepos, which are super
Yeah.
lightweight and based on top of npm workspaces. And then there's the integrated monorepo setup, which is the setup that NX basically came famous of. Which gives more support. And then we
Okay.
have all the set of like different standalone apps, basically,
Okay.
where you don't want a monorepo, but still want some of the NX tooling, which can be actually pretty handy there.
Okay. And I
I guess we
guess
can start with, yeah.
I was gonna say the standalone React app, I think is that an answer to because like the whole debate about create React app, is that
Oh
how
yeah,
that came
yeah,
about?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, it can totally be an
Okay.
answer. Like it is, if you want, it is a replacement for Create React app because it sets you up with like either Webpack or Vite, depending on what you choose. I think Vite is the default one, and a
Okay.
couple of other tooling, and then you can just go along and then create a standalone app. We actually also have an automated migration from Create React app to such
Okay.
a setup, so you
Oh,
can
nice.
easily
That's
also move
nice.
over.
Cool, cool. Okay, so I guess what do you want to look at first? Like we might not necessarily cover all these things today, but
I think the
uh,
integrated one probably would give us the best view into it, and then we can
okay,
expand from there also into a package-based one. But that gives a
cool.
better feel of what it is about. Then here, the next
Okay,
step here is to understand like what type of setup do you want, because sometimes people already know, hey, I'm React land, right? So I want to have a predefined
yeah.
React setup. You can start with an empty one or Angular or Next.js and so on. So I leave it up to you. We can probably choose React, or we can also start empty and then manually add plugins as we want them.
Okay, yeah, I guess we can do React. Why not? Sure. Okay, and then repository name, we'll just call it an extreme. An extreme. Okay, and then
It asks you about
I'm
the bundler.
yeah.
Yeah, we can go with Vite if you want a
Yeah.
fast thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Use Vite.
exactly. I was gonna say, I guess some people still use Webpack maybe for, I don't want to say legacy reasons, but there's like
Yeah,
potentially
yeah,
legacy reasons.
especially in the enterprise environment, right? Like there's like huge apps still built on Webpack. They might even be still restricted to use that for some reason, right? So
Okay,
it makes sense.
I'll just go with the default CSS.
Yeah,
We're not
makes
really
sense.
focusing on CSS today.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So this is interesting now. So I don't know if you want to speak to a bit about the distributed caching. I'm assuming I want to choose yes.
yeah, we can totally choose yes. So this basically sets you up with caching that is also working remotely, right? So it's not just
Okay.
locally happening in your machine, but it will be distributed now to a central remote place, which is NX Cloud in this case. Such that, like, if I, for instance, pulled down now this same repo, I could benefit from that caching setup that you
Okay.
now
Gotcha.
created here.
Okay. While that's just setting up, in terms of the distributed caching, uh, I can see, like, okay, say I'm on the main branch and then I build things. The you know, the build gets cached and it gets invalidated at some point when you make a change. But what happens if I create a new branch? It does the cache distributed caching. Is it branch based? I'm assuming, or
No, it basically takes your source code, the command you're running,
okay,
right? While that is also kind of more intelligent in the sense of it understands if you run it as part of like
okay,
multiple commands that you run, for instance, right? But
yeah,
it is not branch based, so it doesn't really care about like which branch you're on, but more about what source code is going in, which projects are involved, environment
okay,
variables, node versions, that type of stuff. Basically, anything that could potentially influence your build outcome, right? That might change
okay,
it.
gotcha. Okay, cool. So it got the project generated. So I'm just going to open this up in VS Code now, which
Mhm.
should be NX Stream. I'll just open it up in the same VS Code. Just going to shrink my zoom a bit.
Oh, what
Okay.
does -r do? I never used that one.
It allows you to reuse the same VS Code. So, like, instead of opening, like, sometimes you might not want to open up a new VS Code and then close the other
Oh, I
one.
see. So if you have an
So
instance open, it rewrites basically that with the new direction. Oh, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
might
I
be
find it
useful.
handy. Yeah, yeah.
Helps with like tons
Uh,
of VS Code windows.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so we've got the project generated. I don't know if you want to go through the folder structure a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah,
real
so
quick.
so this is basically, since we've chosen React, right? It gives us some sensible defaults, right? Which we think is like useful in terms of best practices type of stuff, right? So you can see already
Yeah.
the annex-stream, which is our React application. So if you expand that one, for instance, we'll see there should be I think we chose Vite, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a Vite
Yeah.
config. There is an index HTML file. I think there's also a bunch of components defined there, and it
Okay.
also has all those tsconfig set up, and those are set up
Okay.
also in a way that is best for editors, which is also why you see like one for specs, one
Yeah, I
for
was
the
gonna
app
say.
actually itself. Yeah, exactly. So setting up is tsconfigs is more tricky than you would imagine, especially like if you start growing your monorepo,
Yeah.
especially with code stuff and then extensions, right? That run like in VS Code, for instance. So this
Yeah,
is
because
on
I
purpose set up in this way, and then they extend basically all from here. Basically, those app-specific ones extend from the tsconfig JSON here, and then
okay.
there's a root level one as well, where it extends further.
Yeah, okay. No, cool. Yeah, no, this is really nice that it comes with sensible defaults because, like, I'm sure you've done the same, but like until recently, I've always been the person that had to configure tsconfig, set up Webpack, ESLint, all the stuff, and so it's really nice. I know more and more tools are doing this now, but just having opinionated, sensible defaults, I think it's a great way to just get started on a project because you can focus on what you're actually trying
Yeah,
to accomplish instead of like,
yeah.
yeah, so the first 2 weeks, yeah, we finally have the repo configured to work in. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally, 100%. And the thing is also like then if you keep adding projects, right? In the monorepo, the whole purpose is like you keep adding libraries and applications potentially, right? And
yeah,
so yeah, you probably do copy and pasting, right? But we all know, right? Like you start with the initial version and you start
yeah,
customizing
yeah,
it. And once you copy and paste, you're there. Like at some point, you're usually saying like, let's throw it away and create from scratch because like it's harder to
yeah,
adjust it rather than starting like new, right? And so these generators have proven really, really effective.
yeah.
So yeah.
Cool, cool. Okay, so we've got our app here, and then
Mhm.
the end-to-end test here that's using
Yep.
Cypress. I like that it's co-located as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
yeah,
interesting because like some people are don't like it at all in the sense that they wanted to have it like in a different folder, and you could have it right,
okay,
like you could totally create a different folder and move it there. It's not a big deal.
yeah,
But yeah, this is basically the end-to-end test, which right now we chose Cypress as the default to automatically test basically that application that we created, and so it's
yeah.
already pre-configured to point to that and load it up and so have that running.
Yeah, no, that's nice too. And okay, so those are the two apps, and then the libs. This is, I
Mhm.
imagine, where you would have your libraries, like that
Yeah,
could be potentially like your design, your components, whatever else you consider being libraries. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
I see we have tools here. So what's the tools folder exactly?
Yeah, so the tools folder is to some degree it's also a bit historical. Like this is kind of the thing where you put your own custom like node scripts and stuff in here, right? So just to have
Okay.
a place predefined. We were actually debating whether to remove that and just give people, because you could like it's not bound to this specific folder, right? Like there's a tsconfig in,
Yeah.
so it's already kind of pre-configured slightly, so it works nicely with TypeScript. But other than that, you could really locate them wherever you want. But the main purpose here in that tools folder is that you could have like custom generators, as we mentioned before, right? Like that
Yeah.
generator that set up the app, you could actually create a local one that just lives in the same monorepo, which you could then
Oh,
invoke to
okay.
generate applications, right? Because maybe the default setup that NX provides for React application or React libraries doesn't fit you, or you want to
Hmm.
customize it, right? And so and this is also what usually companies do. They take that, they wrap it, they add additional stuff, they delete stuff what the NX provides, basically, and then have their custom corporate setup of a library,
Okay.
right? That is pre-configured with a bunch of different, maybe lint rules or
Yeah.
whatever makes sense for
Okay.
you.
And
So that's the
and
place where you
in
usually host them.
okay. And so would these things, would I have to just run these with Node, or can I do something like NX generator,
Yeah,
whatever the
yeah, yeah,
generator's called? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. You can directly run it with that. So yeah,
Okay. No, that's really nice because then, like you said, you can have company specific or just project specific stuff.
yeah,
That's super handy instead of just
yeah.
copy pasting all these things all the time. And I guess like to that point, like if I was a company or just some kind of project that we always want to generate like an NX project in a certain format, can we somehow point to like there's the generators, but is there like I don't know if this makes sense or not, but like so like we've generated the project now, and let's assume we have a few custom generators. Could that particular project structure, including the generators, be something when I do like NX create latest point to my,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, you
okay,
can basically
perfect.
that's what is like when you search on our docs like for creating plugins for NX, that's exactly what you
Yeah,
can do. You can have in those plugins a so-called specific preset generator. And then
okay,
once you package and publish that to your internal npm registry, if you're a company usually, or like to the public npm registry, then when you set
yeah,
up an NX workspace, you can pass the dash dash preset and then just mention like I don't know at like I am developer dash stream slash NX plugin or my NX setup, and so that will
okay, yeah,
bootstrap
yeah,
that and control the whole setup from the very beginning, which is it's
okay,
a common use case. Actually, the Quickifiers, which is like a community built around Quick, they have a
okay, yeah,
setup
yeah,
with an X, right? And they use that preset. So they basically leverage that preset option to set up a new Quick application with an X, where they control the whole environment. Like they control how the initial structure
okay,
looks like, what plugins and stuff is in there, and then they create basically their custom tooling around an X. And so an X, they're really is more like the yeah, if you want the CLI framework that you can leverage,
okay,
right? Built on top.
okay. Yeah, no, I know they're doing lots of interesting stuff with Quick. So I guess
Oh yeah,
that's cool. They're using NX. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we've got the project here. So let's just say like, okay, we're set up. I just want to start, the React app that got filled up here when we built the new application with NX
hmm
here.
hmm hmm
So do I do npx nx something to start it, or
yeah,
what's the
yeah.
okay?
Yeah, exactly. You can do npx nx, and then basically you would mention the command to run it, right? Like the
Okay.
target, which in this case usually serve. And we can find that actually. Let's for viewers just clarify that. Like if you go back up to the application, to the
Yeah.
React application that we found that we generate, there is a project JSON.
Okay.
And so NX can also read the package JSON scripts, but if we set it up like in that specific integrated module like setup, right? Then you
Okay.
have like usually not a project JSON because you don't need it. And so we have that project JSON, which is a more advanced package JSON if you want, right? So it
Okay.
has more metadata around those targets. So if you see here like build, further down there's like I think test and lint. So these are
Okay.
basically exactly as you would have in a package JSON the scripts, but I have more
Okay.
data, as you can see, right? There's an executor. An executor is just a function that gets invoked on the plugin here. In this case, now our Vite, right?
Okay.
Plus, it has options of that get passed basically to that plugin. And
Okay.
so to invoke those, you can actually just then do npx nx, the target you want to have, and then the product
Oh,
name.
okay.
I think you also
Okay. So,
have. Do you have Visual
yeah.
Studio like NX console installed? Is that possible? Because I see
I
it
think I
pop up.
installed it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hold
because
on.
I
Let me
see it like
check.
in that project JSON. You see basically there's the inline link
Yeah,
generate.
I have it installed. Yeah. Yeah, I
Perfect.
do. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
because in that
Yeah.
case you could even just click on that inline link in a project JSON. It would launch it. But yeah, this
Okay.
is
So,
like the usual thing which you.
so let's go into there. Okay. So, oh, you're saying I could just click on these are like links. Okay. Gotcha. So I could
Yeah.
just come here and then click NX build.
Oh, below, no, above the serve, like in line 23, you see that
Oh, okay. Oh,
inline.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
just click
Perfect.
that, and it would run basically NX serve and the product name, which is NX Stream, right? And so
Okay. Okay.
then you have it served up at the
Okay.
port here. Yeah.
Yeah. It opened up in my other browser, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. No, that's nice, and it's super fast. Obviously, it's a
It's
very
Vite.
skinny project at the moment, but it is Vite. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty neat, and yeah, I don't know when I set up NX. I think it's because I was testing an NX monorepo the other day. It must have
Could
prompted.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that way, but just to show folks if they were to do it as well, they would just do this. They would
Yeah.
do the project first, and
No, first
then
or the project first. In that case, you need to do like NX run product
okay,
target, right? So that would be one way. Like exactly NX run and then space
okay.
exactly. Or what many also do is just use basically NX, the target you want to do, like serve, and then the project, right? Which is more natural in terms of like how you
Oh, okay,
speak,
okay.
right? So you say like NX serve me this project, right?
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
that's what I also use most of the time.
Okay, so just like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I'm usually uh I do love Visual Studio Code, but I'm like in the integrated terminal all the time when I'm running
Yeah.
stuff. I rarely click on this stuff, but I know a lot of people find that kind of stuff super helpful.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
NX
we've
console is nice for discovering as well, right? In the sense of like you don't know the generators, which is something we
yeah.
can now also do, right? We also forget always like by heart like how the sequence of the generators are. And so that's when it's actually pretty easy or like helpful
Okay.
to explore that.
Yeah, we've got Talves. I think it's Tony Alves in the chat. He's saying they're a fan of NX. Yeah,
Awesome.
I think yeah. Just a little shout out there to NX, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So and looking at the things here, like you said, these are, I guess, the executors are kind of like npm, like traditional npm scripts. Like it's kind of like, is this considered an npm package, like a scoped
Yeah.
package, and then
Yeah.
or okay,
Yeah. If you look up the
okay,
package
gotcha.
JSON at the very root of the project, you will see
Okay,
there is a novel Vite, which is one of the so-called like plugins, right, that NX can be used with. And so in
okay.
this
So
integrated
yeah,
mode, like we leverage those plugins a lot because they provide more value around the generators and stuff that we mentioned earlier, right? Yeah,
okay, okay,
exactly.
yeah,
So yeah, since
okay,
we
yeah,
use
perfect.
basically the React setup, we got like Vite pre-installed and Node.js and a couple of those plugins that then expose those functionality, right? Like those executors, which are really
Yeah.
like functions that are being run and then do stuff, right? They usually launch node processes and compilation and stuff like that.
Okay, okay, cool, cool. All right. Yeah. So we've got, yeah, I guess we don't need to go too much more through the targets, but there's just different targets. Like obviously you can do
Yeah.
whatever you want, but these are sensible predefined ones like running tests, linting, etc. And
And
yeah,
you can
serve
use
and
your own
build.
as well. So if you want to
Okay.
add something custom, you can just attach your own targets in here. Either you have a plugin or there is also like a command executor, which just really literally takes a node script that you can run, like a node command.
Okay.
And so there you can have full freedom to do whatever you want, really.
Okay. No, that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so we got that going on. So we know how to start up things. So, and if again, if we have multiple projects, again, we can just come here, and then I could say like other project and serve that,
Yeah,
assuming it has
yeah,
that particular thing. Okay,
yeah, yeah. We
cool.
can also generate quickly one, so we can see how that would
Okay,
work, right? So you could say
yeah,
like
sure.
instead of nx serve, you can say npx nx and then generate, or just g.
Okay,
And then again, like you usually give it the plugin name, which contains the generator. So in this case, it would be at
okay,
narwhal/react, because I assume we want to create a React app, another one,
yeah,
and then the generator, which in this case
okay,
is application, because we want to generate a new application.
okay.
Cool. Then you give
So
it a
if I
name,
run,
or just run it, and it would ask you then, hey, what's the name you would like to give that app? And so we just give it some other name.
what would you like to add? React Router. We'll skip React Router for now. Sure. Okay. And then, so
Yeah.
now if I come back to over here, no, I don't want to run Rust Analyzer right now. Nope. I'm going to kill that. Sorry. Okay. So if we come back to here, we've got NX Stream, NX. Okay. And then
You
again,
have
we've
another
got
app.
not only did it build the app, but it also bootstrapped
Yeah.
it with the end-to-end tests.
Yeah.
And no, and that's super fast too. Yeah. I, I guess a question I have, because I haven't like worked in monorepos a lot, is like I definitely see, where you'd be like, okay, I've got my, like, assuming it's front end, like I've got my components or design system in one app. I have the actual site in another. But do you frequently see a lot of people with several sites in one monorepo? Is that
Oh
like
yeah,
a
it totally
common thing?
happens. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it totally happens. So there's and we can maybe also dig a bit deeper here on how we create like some like just libraries, and then would link them to see like how that would look like. But there's totally
Okay.
a lot of repos around that have multiple applications, and then they have libraries as a way to implement the logic. So in an NX workspace, we usually recommend that those apps at the very top, you're not going to implement a whole lot in them. So they are
Okay.
more like if you want your deployment container in the end, because they are the ones that you can then build and package whatnot and then publish to some like deployment environment, right? While the actual
Okay.
logic, we recommend to push them as much in the libs. And those
Okay.
don't need to be libs that are reusable, right? So a lot of the misconception is also like, hey, I don't want to create a library for this because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not general purpose. I don't want to publish it, whatnot, right? But that's not the purpose here. It's really just for structuring, right? And modularizing
Okay.
your whole code base if you want.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, all right. So that's cool that we did that. And again, you said we can create custom generators. I guess in terms of like if I want to run multiple things, like I'm thinking more like in a deploy context, like we want to make sure it runs linting, and then like the tests and then all that. Do you just basically append all of the different kind of targets you want to run, or how does that work, like
Yeah,
when it
yeah. You
comes to
can
deploying?
either Yeah, exactly. So there are different ways. So one that we can test it out right now. So we can run npx run dash many. That will be a
Okay.
command to actually run like multiple scripts. We say nx run dash many.
Dash many.
Yeah, dash many.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry. Like if you go like minus many, basically
Oh, oh,
run
oh, oh,
minus.
oh, dash. Why did I think front
Yeah,
slash?
everything together, like as one
Oh,
word.
it's a
Like this
double
is like
double,
just
isn't it?
no. If you no, this is not an argument. Like it's like if you run minus many, everything attached together. So that
Oh,
would be
okay, okay, okay.
exactly,
Sorry.
and then you pass now the targets. So you do
Okay,
like space dash dash targets,
okay. And then I could
and
do
then
like
you can
serve
say
or
like
build
lint.
or
Yeah, you can say
okay,
lint, for instance, build test. Those are usually the
okay,
classic ones.
okay,
Exactly. And so now if you run this would now run them in parallel locally for all
okay,
the projects that we have. Now we just really literally have like two. It runs also the linting on the end-to-end test, but this is basically what you would see now, right? So it ran
okay,
through all of these different ones and built them in an order also that is most parallelized possible. So always
okay.
for speed reasons, basically.
Yeah, okay, gotcha,
And the cool
gotcha.
thing here is
Okay,
also because you see that view logs and investigate cache misses stuff. Like now we have the remote caching, so we could even look at what has been run. But if
Okay.
you rerun the same command, like if you just hit the button up and then run the same
Yeah.
command again over your CLI, this is
It's a
now
lot
super
faster.
fast because it's
Yeah.
cached, right? So that is one of the things
Yeah.
we talked about earlier, which now a lot of the monorepos also have those toolings, because you don't want to rerun that thing again because we literally didn't change anything. So there's no point of running those, right? So it just pulls them out of
Yeah.
the cache.
Yeah. And the distributed caching, like you were saying, makes a lot of sense because like say I'm building these things locally, like even like when I go to CI, it's still going to be using that distributed cache. And then so like, if I don't know, if I built a production build locally, it cached it in the distributed cache. So when I go to run the CI CD pipeline, if it had to rerun that and there was no changes for a lot of things, it would just pull it straight from there. So it's
Yeah.
pretty powerful in that sense. And the other one, which I'm sure that this is probably obvious to you, but it's like I'm a new person on the team. I just joined, and I run I get the project set up on my computer, and I run a build the first time, and it's like instantaneous because everybody else has already run it, which is super cool,
Exactly.
I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest value even is just on the CI pipelines itself, because like that can become a problem in a monorepo. So monorepo doesn't
Yeah.
have just good sides, right? Like if you have more projects, like by definition your build times will go up, right? And so if you don't
Yeah.
have mechanisms such as caching or more intelligent parallelization, like you will hit a moment where like you get congestion in your build pipeline, right?
Hmm.
Like people have difficulty to merge their stuff into main because there's so much stuff
Yeah.
going on, right? And builds are taking so long. And so even there, for instance, the caching can even be beneficial just for your own PR, because assume you have like 10 projects, you push them up, one of them fails, right? Because the tests don't
Yeah.
pass. So you get them down, you fix the test, see the error, right? But like maybe that build took like 30 minutes, right? With the
Yeah.
caching now, next round, it would just build that single one.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So it wouldn't go and build all the others because there's the cache that the CI just pulls, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No. So I guess that's somehow based on like content hashing or something in terms of like
Yeah.
files or okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it basically
Makes a lot of
stores a
sense.
hash key that it builds out of like the command that has been run, the product involved, environment variables, a bunch of that type of stuff. And it creates a hash code that is then stored and used as an identifier basically for pulling the cache. And
Okay.
this is not
Cool.
just obviously it restores the logs, as in this case here, for instance, we see the console logs are here exactly as we had before. And we usually
Yeah.
add an additional note, as you can see, like that NX read it out of the cache, so people know, okay, why is it fast, right? Because
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this case it was a full cache hit because we had 8 out of 8 tasks, right? But assume, for
Hmm.
instance, we would go to the YOLO app and then like add a console log and rerun this
Yeah.
again. It would rebuild the YOLO app, but not the other stuff, right? So we would have like 7 out of 8 or something are cached.
Okay. Yeah.
And so yeah.
No, and it's yeah, and I mean, aside from like obviously better DX in that sense, in terms of you're getting faster feedback, I guess I don't know if people talk about it, but like I'm sure there's an environmental impact to this as well. Like you're not
Oh yeah.
constantly rerunning builds. Like I can only like I can't even tell you how many builds I've reran before, and like that's just me. Like imagine all the devs on the planet, and so like I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
definitely see this helping, whether people care or not is one thing, but I think it's pretty interesting that this, could help with a carbon footprint.
Yeah, yeah. Let me actually look up the blog post, because I think we had a blog post at some point about the environment savings that, yeah,
Okay.
help the environment. Let me see. Because this was a blog post from August last year. And
Mhm.
now we have much bigger savings. But at that point already, it was like in 7 days, NX Cloud, like the remote cache, saved
Okay.
around like 5 years of computation, right? Like just in 7 days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
No,
that
that's
is
pretty
kind
incredible.
of, yeah, crazy. Because at some point we were like, hey, let's check our like database and see like how much do we save like in a week, in a month, since forever.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible like how much you can actually save. And that was like last year, like half a year ago, over half a year. So but now we are
Okay.
like
Yeah.
much higher because more people use it, and then obviously that increases over time in the sense of
Yeah.
cash savings.
And I wonder too, would like because of the distributed caching, I know there's other projects that do this too, but um I guess that would also make for a compelling reason to potentially have a mono repo as well, because like, it's all in the same project, so you're also sharing the distributed cache. Um, I don't know if that's necessarily a reason to choose a monorepo, but
Yeah, I mean, like the caching, even like the standalone project that we mentioned earlier, like a standalone
mhm.
project is nothing else than having this structure here, but with like a
Okay.
root level source folder, because there's just one
Yeah.
app, right? But you still can have multiple libs, as we can now explore a bit and stuff, and you would still get the caching there as well, right? And so
Yeah.
imagine you modularize your single application rather than having folders. You have such local libraries, and then you can
Mhm.
test them individually. But at the same time, you guys also like the caching now from those individually. And so
Yeah.
the caching
Okay.
even applies on those non-monorepo scenarios. You get much more benefits in a monorepo, of course, because it's just a bigger scale
Yeah.
usually. But
Okay.
still, if it's faster, right? It's always better, right? Regardless, right? Like
Yeah.
if you keep saying, but the impact is a different one, of course.
Okay. And getting back to like the standalone support, it's you basically literally get all the same tooling, and the only difference, like you said, is there's no apps folder at this point because there's no separate packages. It's just literally the
Yeah,
one app in the root, and but everything
yeah,
else, like
yeah.
you have access to the generators, the targets, and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was our main kind of idea behind, right? Because we saw people like not only like NX because of the monorepo part, but especially because of the
Yeah.
generators, for instance, or the caching and that
Yeah.
type of thing, right? And so that's why. I mean, the structure here, the apps and libs folder, those are just conventions, right? Like we can rename them
Mhm.
and like adjust them basically. So it didn't cause us a whole large effort to create those standalone setups, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so we were like, there might be a big case where people don't want to use an X because they're like, yeah, I'm not using a monorepo really, but I want
Yeah.
that modularization approach, right? And a lot of people actually jumped on an X anyway, with just one app
Okay.
in there, never the intention of creating another app, but just for the library modularization, right? And so for
Yeah.
them, that new standalone app was the new get-go, like go-to, because that's what they actually intended from in the first place. We just didn't have support.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, no, for sure. I'm definitely in my own projects. I'm definitely gonna see about getting NX in there just to try it out. Because this is stuff I'm gonna be working with more and more at work. So, um, I'm curious about like so say I'm a dev and I'm like, okay, oh, NX has this new standalone app support. So I go ahead and I bootstrap my project, and I've got my standalone app, got my generators, whatever I'm doing, and everything is going great. And then one day I say, I'd like to promote this to a monorepo because things are just getting bigger now and it
Yeah.
makes sense
Yeah.
now. Is there a migration path or for that, or is it like, because I know the standalone support's super new, so maybe there isn't, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
curious about that.
Yeah, there will be. And it's a good thing you
Okay.
bring up, because tomorrow in my stream, I'm actually going to explore what it would mean now to do that manually, right? So tomorrow, like
Okay.
my stream, I'm going to create a standalone app and then transition to an NX monorepo. And the reason, and there will be a migration path that is automatic. So we would run a generator that says like, I don't know, upgrade to monorepo or something like that, right? And would reshuffle the structure a bit in the configuration file such that it works in a monorepo, as you would
Okay.
normally have with NX. The reason we didn't do it right now is because the standalone is so new, and we wanted to first kind of see like how do people use it, like what are the use cases, how do they structure the applications, like to understand like how do
Okay.
we want to reshuffle that in a monorepo, but then afterwards, right? So that's the main thing.
Okay.
And so that's why also tomorrow I'm using my stream to kind of experiment
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
like what potential options and like how could you do it. But even right now,
Yeah.
it's I guess I didn't try it yet myself, to be honest. But it's most expected to be mostly just reordering, creating folders, moving projects around, something like that, right?
Okay.
It should
Yeah.
already work. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
that big of a deal. Yeah.
Uh, I'm gonna drop your Twitch. I'm just trying to remember what it is.
Oh, I
I dropped
can send you the message
I
if you
dropped
want.
I dropped the links to everything. I think is it in those links? Okay, no, yeah. I just have your Twitter, your YouTube, and your website right now. So
Yeah, just
I'll
dropped it
update
in the
it.
internal chat window,
Okay, cool.
and
Let me
the
grab
one that
that.
you create, I think.
Yeah, cool. All right, cool. Yeah, okay. I figured it was something like that. Okay, cool. So I'll just drop this. Definitely check this out, folks, because it'll build off of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah. Okay. So no, it's good. That's good to know. I mean, like I said, like it's a new feature. So, but that's cool that you have plans to to do this? Because I could see that as being a pretty common upgrade path
Yeah.
as people get bigger projects going on. So
Yeah, because you might
okay,
not, and that's how it often also happens with like the Monorepo setup in NX in general, right? So people use it,
yeah,
but they never think about having a second app. But then, as
yeah,
we have seen just right now, it's so easy to generate a new app. So they like, as they explore it, they were like, hey, why not create a second application? Like the typical scenario is
yeah,
like a public facing app and the administration part, like the more thing where like just admins go in to configure stuff, right? So
yeah.
instead of having them in one separate one, you just like separate them out into different apps. They link the same libraries or have a common subset of libraries in the workspace, right? But then you deploy
Okay,
them differently and you scale them differently, right? Because the
yeah,
public facing app, you can scale it up because it needs to have like much bigger load. But then the
mhm,
more kind of admin kind of administration panel, right? You can just deploy it like on the side if you want, right? Because there's just a bunch of
okay,
people
yeah,
chiming in to configure the app, maybe, right? So things
yeah,
like that are made very easy. And once people recognize that, they're like, oh, let me just do that, right? Let me try that out and then go in that direction without even
okay,
initially thinking about it.
yeah. No,
Cool.
it's I think once that upgrade path from standalone app to monorepo is in place, that'll be super interesting because then, you know, well, I think even now, like the fact that you have standalone support, like you have all this tooling built in, like it almost seems like a no-brainer to just, you know, unless somebody's really adverse to using tooling, like it just seems like a no-brainer to, hey, I'll just start up an NX standalone app,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's the
yeah,
shortest path if you want. Like, if you want to focus on building something, right? Let's say like you want a React application, and we talked about before, like the create React app scenario, right? Like it's a
yeah,
typical
yeah,
thing. Like you don't want to use that because you already know you're gonna run into trouble at some point because it's not kind of scalable, it's not like up to date, and they're working basically on it, right? So this could be the perfect alternative because you say like, hey, give me a new React app, right? It's pre-configured, similar to what Create React app gives you today. But for instance, you
yeah,
can already choose Vite, right?
hmm,
Vite test, so more modern tooling. And at the same time, as we kind of talked about right now, like if you then need to upgrade, right? Like if you need to add more projects and stuff, you can do that, right? It can just evolve it into
yeah,
a monorepo at some point without any huge migration path or whatnot. So yeah, personally, I like it. Obviously, I'm biased, but because as
yeah,
I'm the co-contributor to the tool, but like I like the possibility to expand, right? So you're not blocked right now, and you need to
yeah.
take all the decision up front, but you kind of go in, explore the tooling, and then kind of expand from there and make it bigger, more automated or whatnot, right?
Mhm. Um, the I'm just things are popping in my head as we're just talking about stuff. So like if I come back to the package JSON for a minute, so there's a lot of dev dependencies in here with stuff that provides like the support, for example, like Cypress, the linting, and so on. Uh, for like I guess a common scenario is publishing to npm. Are there, obviously you need your credentials or a token to do that, but like is there like a package to help facilitate that within NX, or is that just something you just come with your own, roll your own kind of like I know at Netlify, like in our public repos, you can see it, like we have a GitHub action that does the publish and all that, but is there something in NX that provides that? It might be out of scope of what NX would be doing, but just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like in a sense that it's something we want to expand much more because until now we mostly went until to like here's your build artifact. Now,
Okay.
like add your own custom whatever you want it to publish, deploy, or whatever you want to do with it. I think the
Yeah.
novel.js package has some of those generators already. So if you generate a library with that, you can
Okay.
choose basically to have publishing, and we can try it out if you want. I can just see because
Yeah.
I
Sure.
remember vaguely that we had some publishing, so minimum publishing step in there. So for instance,
Okay.
if you do like npx nx generate again g basically, and
Yeah.
then add novel slash js
Uh,
for JavaScript,
JS. Yeah.
it
And
actually
then
generates TypeScript as well. So it's kind of the
okay.
naming, but yeah, again, and then colon like everything attached like colon library or lib.
Okay.
I think lib works as well.
Okay. All right. So
So then
run
if you
this.
hit enter, then you can name whatever you want to name it.
Libby. I could get
Then
sued
you say like
for using
what
this.
what test runner you want to choose. Probably want to use vtest here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's
Okay.
see whether it
Oh,
generated the published one already. Because usually you also need to provide a dash dash publish. But yeah, there's a package
Oh, okay.
JSON if you look at it.
Yeah.
I think it's already generating by default a publishable kind of thing. So here we have already package JSON where you can then add the versioning and stuff. And if you go to the
Okay.
project JSON, and let's have a look at the targets that are there. Like, so there's the build,
So
there's
the
the lint.
build
I think
and
they're
test.
test. Okay, then let's try and let's just generate a new one and then provide the dash dash publishable. I think if you publishable.
You got a good
Let's see.
memory. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see whether I have such a good memory because otherwise we need to like usually I then resort to
okay.
we need
So
also the import path. Yeah, right.
okay.
Because the thing is in a publishable library you need to have something like there's a valid npm scope, right? While inside the monorepo, we use the TypeScript path mapping to map your libraries. And so there you can have like infinite nesting, for instance, which in an npm scope is not possible. And so that's why we here say like provide your own, right? So you just give it like, I don't know, add something. Yeah, exactly. / libby or whatever.
Sure. Okay. Libby 2.
All right. So we test.
Cool.
Okay. Then let's have a look at what got generated there.
Okay. So look at the package. Let me close
yeah, that
this.
should be mostly the same. And the project JSON should now, I think, have also a published target or something like that.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
perfect.
so that's super nice. Yeah.
And so this is super minimal because if you look at it, like this uses the NX run commands, which I mentioned before. So this is a way to create your own target in here, but then defer to a node script, right? And if you look at the command there, it just runs a node script from the tools folder. And that should be there as well, generated. Yeah, exactly. And this one is just a super minimum setup of how you could potentially grab the version. I don't even know whether it's like interactive in the sense of asking you the version and stuff, and then it publishes to just npm.
Okay, but still, it's nice that that gets provided for you. Like you can obviously customize that publish.mjs file, but it's just nice because it. Like a lot of what I do at Netlify is like one of the things we really focus on is we're always trying to remove friction for developers, and doing stuff like this, like even if the publish command isn't exactly how you might want it for your particular project, you're already at least given a pretty good boilerplate to get started, so and I think
and you could customize
that's where
it, right?
it's powerful.
You could create your own generator in that case to just create your publish script that you want. But
yeah. So, but no, this is super powerful. These are the kind of things I feel like I know the I haven't done any Angular since Angular 1.4.6, so like a long time ago. I think I think I did a hello world with Angular 2 when TypeScript came out with support, but I know the Angular CLI relies heavily on generators, and I feel like there's this resurgence of generators because like there used to be the names escape Yeoman, a lot of like even VS Code when you create a plugin or an extension for VS Code, it uses Yeoman. But it's nice to see this resurgence of generators, or maybe they never left, but I just feel like they're becoming more and more apparent these days. Like I interviewed some of the folks from the Redwood JS core team. They use generators a lot for everything, just for bootstrapping parts of the code. And I think Astro as well, like they'll just say like Astro install, I forget what it is, like Astro : Preact or whatever. And then all of a sudden Preact's in, and it's just like, it's just super nice, I find, because it helps remove a lot of that friction, even if it's minimal friction.
Yeah. No, 100%. The thing is like, I mean, there are two fields, right? And that's also the main reason why we have an X in both those ways, like the package based where an X doesn't provide you any generators at all, like by default, right? You do all your own in the package JSON, create your user scripts. So we really want to stay out of your way and just make your tasks faster. That's it, right? But then like in a lot of cases, what I work also with companies and clients and stuff, they really appreciate those generators because also for consistency, right? Like if you have a monorepo and you have different teams, like a new team comes in, right? If that monorepo is already kind of to some state where people automated it, they created their own generators even, like that match the company style guides and stuff, right? You just use those, right? If you have NX console installed, it would grab those automatically. So you don't even need to know the commands. You just browse them and say like, oh, there's a command for my company.new library or whatever, right? You click it, provide options, go, right? And so it's just such a convenience to have, and then you can
Yeah.
customize it and go further from there, right? But
Yeah.
I fully agree. Like I actually saw it also on Astro last time, because I'm
Mhm.
migrating my blog to Astro. And so I saw
Okay.
there, I think they have the Astro add command, right? Which reminded me like
Yeah.
the ng add command, because Angular had that for a while, like where you could say ng
Okay.
add some Angular library, and that would have a generator built in that then set it up for you, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a very, very similar kind of philosophy. So it's nice to see that coming up.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. And oh, sorry, I just had a notification pop up that I didn't want to see. Nothing bad. It's just I thought I had notifications turned off. Um, no, this is super cool. Again, like obviously I still need to get a little more familiar, but like the fact that I can just do npx nx something, and I don't know why it's not running right now. I changed something in my shell the other day, but I use Fig that
Okay,
gives
yeah.
you the autocomplete. And
Yeah.
I don't know if there's integrations with NX, like, because I know they have the way
There
Fig
was
works
some
from what.
talking at some point. I remember there was some talk. I don't know
Yeah.
whether some of our core members actually interacted with them and provided some
Okay.
sort of automation, but I remember there being something where
Yeah.
they have added some support.
Because from what I understood, the way Fig works, which is completely off topic, but they
Yeah.
have like you create these definition files, and I think they, for a lot of stuff, like they read like the manual files for like Unix and stuff, but you can basically
Oh,
create your
interesting.
own. And I think that's how like other tools get theirs, and there's a paid portion of that product, but like you can, I think on the open source side, like anybody can contribute these definitions, assuming they make sense.
Nice.
But that's just a side note.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah. Okay, so we've got all that here. Okay, now the tools. Okay, this stuff I don't think we really need to go through. These are just configuration files for all the
Yeah,
things
these are
like.
like added to configs, prettier configs that we find
Yeah,
useful, basically, that you don't want to argue
yeah,
about tabs
exactly.
and space and stuff. It's just,
Yeah, yeah, no,
you just
yeah,
want to
and
delegate that.
yeah, and it gets back to what you were saying before, like back in the day, like I would be copying a Webpack config and then like tweaking it a little bit, and that can definitely introduce inconsistencies in, and you really, like, when I think from like a code maintainability standpoint, because like there's been some projects like where I was the only person maintaining at one point, you want to have that consistency just to make your life easier. So like
Yeah.
the generators totally do that. Okay, so there's all that. I'm wondering if there's anything else to cover here or not. Like, I don't think we necessarily need to build out an app. I mean, like, we could obviously, I could just add some stuff to the
Yeah.
React here,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, what we could show maybe is like how you would kind of develop such an application. In the sense that, as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah,
right? If you add, like, let's say we want to add a hello world component, right? In a traditional application, what you would do is just go in
yeah,
here, create a new folder, or however you want to structure it, right? And then
yeah.
add the component in there. In an X, usually you do it differently, or at least like that's
Okay,
the recommendation we provide, right? You would
yeah,
modularize it out into a library. And so in that
okay.
case, you would just go ahead, for instance, and create a new library. Let's say our, I don't know, UI
The
components or
Libby
messages
or
components, or even just hello world.
okay,
Right. So we
yeah.
could
So we can,
say NX generate exactly. Let's create a React library. So we have already
yeah,
the
okay,
plugins and stuff. So if you go and say add now/react::lib, this is
yeah,
because it then comes with the React preset stuff.
okay,
Exactly. Then you can give it a name. Let's say hello-world.
yeah, yeah,
We can give it
yeah.
also potentially a directory.
I'll just call it terrible name components. I don't know, or I don't know. I'm just giving a terrible name. Naming's hard. Okay, Y
And
components, and then just enter.
And then you can, yeah, and then usually what you do, because this might be, for instance, like one of those libraries that are just specific to our NX-Stream app, right? Or our YOLO app, whatever. And so usually
Yeah.
what you do at the end is you provide also directory, right? And just nest it
Okay.
in here. And so
Okay.
you go like
So
-- directory and say,
yeah.
create a, I don't know, if you want to add it to a YOLO app, we just add
Yeah.
YOLO, right? For instance.
Okay.
Like
Oh,
in an
okay. I see.
enterprise app, this would be, I don't know, you have your domain areas, right? You have the orders and products and stuff. And so you nest order specific libraries below that folder.
Okay.
Yeah, then you choose basically whatever you want to have. You
Choose
don't
V,
even
I
need a
imagine.
build step. You can even choose
Okay.
none here.
Okay.
And I will explain in a second, because the library doesn't need to be buildable in NX because we use TypeScript path mapping, so it just pulls the source
Yeah.
here, right? And
Okay.
so now we should have in the libs folder a new library generated. So you see the YOLO app folder, right? Like the YOLO folder here.
Okay.
And
And
then
then
below that,
yellow
there's the
Lego.
Lego folder, right? And so this is also,
Okay.
for instance, a way where you say, hey, this is just a YOLO specific library. So it's not necessarily meant to be reused, right? Outside of it.
Oh, okay. I see.
This
It's
is just a
kind
way
of
for
the
structuring, right?
okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a namespace, but it just indicates what it's for,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
or
And
less.
then
Yeah.
you
Okay.
can also, there are ways to enforce it, but like, yeah, that would be like a longer story. But like, this is
Okay.
mostly for structuring, signaling like what is done, right? In such a lib, then for instance, you see the component that is in here, which is that YOLO dash Lego,
Okay.
which has been placed in that application. And then there's the index.ts file, which you can see as your like public API endpoint, like for other pieces
Okay.
that are want to use it. So all the logic can happen in that lib folder here within that
Okay.
Lego library. And then you might want to
Okay.
expose some components to the outside world,
Okay.
right?
So I could do would I just create a file in here like
Yeah,
YOLO.tsx, and then I can just
exactly.
say export YOLO TS. No, what did I call it? Yeah, just YOLO. Export. Yeah, I guess we'll use const YOLO. And then we'll just do this. Thank you, Copilot. Okay.
Super
Okay.
useful in streams.
Yeah. Why did it just
Watch out
delete?
in
Oh,
plug, yeah.
sorry. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It is useful in streams, but sometimes when somebody's trying to explain something to me and
Yeah.
Copilot's like, oh no, I think you mean this. I think you mean
Yeah.
this. So so it's but I've definitely found it super useful for sure. Okay, so I've got my component there, and then I guess
Yeah, here now we could
in
decide, right? Like, do we want,
yeah,
like, is this just a component that is within that library because you
yeah.
compose it together with some other part,
Okay.
right?
So
Or do we want to
okay.
expose it, right? Because we could also
Okay.
expose it. So we would go into the index.ts file, which are kind of public API
Okay.
if you want to just export it there as well.
Okay, start from then whoops. Oh, I'll just lib. We have to add the extensions now. I know they're gonna have to do that soon, or is that just for JS? Okay,
Hmm. Right.
right.
And so
Yeah, cool.
now we can use that library. And so if you, just so people understand, if you scroll, like close the libs folder, the entire one, collapse it, so we see the other files.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you scroll down a bit into the tsconfig base JSON.
Okay. Oh, I got this prompt here. Sorry.
Exactly. Then
Okay.
here you see those path mappings, right? Because when I mentioned
Okay.
earlier, you don't need to have a builder, like you don't need to builder necessarily. It's because also
Yeah.
like all the libraries that we create are exposed via this TypeScript path mappings. This is a TypeScript feature. And now we can
Yeah.
actually, yeah, copy this and use that as an import part, right? And as you can see, this just
Okay.
points to the index.ts file, right? There's no magic
Yeah.
here. It just points there. And so now we
Yeah.
could go to our YOLO app and just import it from there and have it visualized, right?
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Okay. And then in here, let's just come in here. Then we can do import. And here, and then we could just say, thank you, Copilot. Okay. And then, okay, so that's nice. And if I go to definition, it should respect it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be clear here too, so like I'm definitely familiar with the paths in TypeScript. So it's kind of like an alias to some
Yeah,
degree.
exactly.
Does that because in terms of Vite just knows to read the TS here to do the because this is the file mapping, but for when it I guess because like when I used to do this in Webpack, I would have the path in here, and then I would have to also create a Webpack alias. But I imagine Vite just
That's
knows
what
or
we do
handles it.
behind. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what we do behind the scenes. I think like for the Vite config, if you open it up in the app, like in the YOLO app, I think
Yeah.
there should be, let's see, if you scroll a bit down.
Okay. So here.
This is the task config. This is just for workers. Here, like the Vite TS config paths.
Okay, yeah.
I think this one is the one that reads it in, because we collaborated with the
Okay.
V team on this specific part to optimize it, where you can read in such tsconfig paths. And here we just give it basically, here's like, where's the root, right? And so it goes
Okay.
out, finds that tsconfig, and from there it also understands like how to compile. But yeah, since
Okay.
that library, we chose it to not be buildable. When you
Mhm.
build the app, it would just pull the sources in. Same for Webpack, right?
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So, okay, so it's not really a scope package because it's not published. It's really
Exactly.
just for internal builds.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's, you could say it's mostly just for structuring, right? So you could
Yeah.
still run the tests just for this, and you get the caching just for this. So there is some speed
Okay.
optimization, but in terms of the build, it's just for like for structuring. Now you could
Okay, yeah.
create it buildable, like we did. Like you could have chosen there to use Vite, right? And in that case, it would build it, and then NX would take care also for remapping to the dist output and stuff like that, right? Behind the scenes.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of people just use it this way, just for the pure structuring approach of it.
Yeah. No, I think this makes a lot of sense because like I remember at one point where like it would make sense to have like components in a library, but we don't, like because of this particular project, we don't necessarily need to publish it. There's no point in publishing it. We could make a scope, like a private package, and then we import it, but it's really just a bunch of npm ceremony for no reason potentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
So no, this is super nice.
Yeah.
It's I haven't seen that usage of the pass in that way before. Like, I mean, I've used it when I'm within the same project, but
Yeah. Just to
it's
avoid like relative navigation within the project. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
no, that's super cool. Okay, and then so like you said, so this particular one, if we come back to the libs, okay, so this is we explicitly said we just want this for YOLO, but if I wanted this library to be for external use, it would be something like the libby one or libby two, right? And then
Yeah.
from there, when I import it, it really would be a scope package that's just linked in the project.
No, it like
Is that right?
in this, yeah, yes and no. Like in this integrated kind of setup of NX, it always leverages those
Okay.
tsconfig path mappings, right? So the
Okay.
whole approach of like, do we nest it below YOLO or just have it top level? That's just for us in terms of like, how do we want to have the folder structure, basically, right? And
Okay.
so you can move it actually around even and move it higher up and like import it from there. It mostly from a structural point of view, what happens is that people usually kind of nest them in. So it's when you work
Yeah.
on the YOLO app, and the libs for the YOLO app are within a YOLO folder in that libs folder, right? So you can just go
Yeah.
in there and expand it from there. So it's mostly a structuring kind of thing.
Yeah, but
Um,
but
yeah.
but I can see that I can still see that being super. I mean, I definitely like it being segregated like this because, at some point when you're in your project and it's just like folder, 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 and
Oh yeah, you
so
want to avoid
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Totally.
no, and this is super. And again, it's just structure, and then like obviously like in VS Code or other editors, you can do Command P and you can pretty much find the file
Yeah.
anyways. So
Yeah.
like yeah, no, that's super cool. Bumpy Lumps in the chat is saying, I tried to implement a monorepo for an interview project in December, and I bit off more than I could chew, but it was a great learning experience. I'm not sure what you used, Bumpy Lumps, but I know just from my own learning experience, I'm definitely gonna move one of my like either my website or some of the stuff I use for streaming. I think the streaming stuff because like we didn't really talk about it, but like for my stream, like most of the things on the stream right now are web views. They're just like web sources,
Nice.
like for people that have used OBS. So like the footer on the bottom there with like your name and stuff, that's a web page, and I pull in data from Airtable and then like there's it's not there right now, but if I click like the donut here, you're gonna see a donut pop up. You can move those around, but that's all like web stuff. So and I've kind of just mishmashed this all together, and they're not all necessarily in one project. So I think bringing that into a monorepo would just it would make my life easier because it's all in the same place.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's actually my next thing I want to move also, because right now I've set it up in my OBS just as like normal OBS kind of scene, right, which you
okay,
click together. But actually, like
yeah,
on that side, Jason Langsdorff, like his Learn with Jason
yeah,
stuff, like he just recently had a couple of episodes where he codes and restructures his website, his streams, and all
yeah,
that stuff, and he used an NX monorepo. He used the
Okay.
package-based approach where you have like full flexibility and you just have package scripts and stuff. So you might want to look at
Yeah.
those, like his recordings, because
Okay.
there he actually does exactly the same stuff. He has one NX
Okay.
monorepo with his block in there, the whole like I think like the whole web view layout for his streams, all the stuff kind
Okay.
of co-located. The Learn with JSON. Even one of them is even I think like I think that his blog or the Learn with JSON side is an Astro side, while
Okay.
some of the forms part is still remix. So he has
Hmm.
also that type of thing, like he's different technologies if you
Okay.
want, right, in the same repo. It's actually pretty
No,
nice.
that's
I didn't know about that. It just like happened to jump into one of his streams, and he was like, "Hey, let me create an accent, like
yeah,
move
yeah.
stuff around here." So I followed along. It's pretty interesting one because he goes through a lot of those concepts basically. So
Yeah, no, yeah, Talv's Dev in the chat saying, yeah, it's a great example of how to apply it.
yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. And this actually brings up a question I have. Oh, thanks for the follow, Mike, and the rest. Um, like, is there a point when there's too many things in a monorepo? Like, because like getting back to like what you when you were first talking about monorepos and you were talking about Bazel at Google. I've never worked at Google, but I've heard many times that like almost the entire code base for so many things is one large monorepo, and I'm wondering like you know, like obviously it could be a preference thing too, but is there a point where you would tell somebody like, yeah, maybe that should be either another
yeah,
auto repo
yeah,
or
totally.
like, because
Yeah,
like
totally.
you know, and
Yeah,
you can't put everything in there forever. I don't think, but
yeah, I mean, you could probably, right, but like for instance, like Google
okay,
is the extreme case, right? I think they even have their own implementation of Git because it just doesn't scale, right? Like they have like
yeah,
a totally different tooling stack, but also like obviously the stuff that kind of maintain that. But no, like
yeah,
usually in reality, like when we work like from NX with like big
mhm,
customers, big clients, right, which are also like Fortune 500 companies, so really large ones, like
yeah,
they usually have what I see, the multiple monorepos and still single project repositories like polyrepos, whatever you want to call those, right? So
okay,
it makes most sense to co-locate similar projects, right? So kind of
yeah,
projects from the same area and the same domain areas that you want to move together, because the main
mhm,
scope should always be like you want to ship stuff faster, right? So that's why you create a
yeah,
monorepo. You want to get
yeah,
like away from the friction of having to publish the registry and reuse and whatnot, right? So you just try to
yeah,
co-locate some of the stuff together in one monorepo, and then you can have multiple ones per larger business area if you want of your enterprise, right? And still share also over registries, because for instance here our Libby, right, we made it
yeah,
publishable. Like nothing prevents us from also publishing that to our internal registry. And so in another monorepo you could pull it in, or also in a non-monorepo environment, right, you couldn't just pull it in,
yeah,
which is actually what often happens, which is a classic example with the design system libraries and
yeah,
components, right? So they build it in a
yeah,
monorepo because it's easy. They maybe have it even co-located with their main monorepo applications because it's so easy to
yeah,
consume them. So their main stuff is always up to date. But then they also publish
mhm,
it to the registry because you cannot pretend that everything is a monorepo, right? So others should also be
yeah,
able to consume those, right? So that's totally legit. So I
mhm,
would strongly like go in that direction. Just co-locate what makes
yeah.
sense, basically.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, don't treat it like a bucket to put literally everything in
Yeah,
just
no.
because of convenience.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I thought it was the case. It was just more just curious your thoughts
Yeah.
on that. No, that's really good. Just doing a time check. We got about 12 minutes here. I don't know. I'm honestly pretty excited about this stuff because I just started working with some of this stuff at work recently, so it's definitely now I've been nerd sniped that I need to migrate my stuff to NX.
Yeah, let me know
um,
how that goes. I'm
yeah,
curious.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking about the product itself, so like so there's NX, like we've been using it. It's open source. There's NX Cloud, the company, and there's the distributed caching, which I enabled here. Um, I imagine that's like, I guess I'm kind of well, I'm curious about like I'm assuming like distributed caching for larger projects is where the money would probably come from, like and you know everybody can still benefit from the open source, which is great. Um,
Yeah. 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 So
yeah,
so our thing with the distributed caching, like we right now price it in the sense of like hours saved, right? Because that is what NX Cloud, the caching does. So it saves you
Yeah.
computation time. So we kind of charge based on that. And so what we did, like I think a year ago almost, like we said, hey,
Okay.
let's open up like on the public cloud base, what we are using right now.
Mhm.
We're using basically you have like 500 hours of computation time saved, which is usually
Okay.
more than enough that you will ever like hit. And in the
Yeah.
worst case, if you hit that, it would just stop caching. That's it, right? It would just stop
Okay. Okay.
remote caching. The local caching would still continue, but your CI
Yeah.
might suffer, right? And so at that point, you could
Yeah.
always say like, hey, good, like, do I want to expand? And then you could kind of buy hours if you want, like coupons to increase
Yeah.
that. And
Oh,
so
okay.
that's when you start paying basically. But the
Yeah.
main revenue source there is definitely large enterprises, right? Because what they
Yeah.
want is usually not have it in a public cloud, right? But they want to
Mhm.
have it in their own infrastructure. And so NX Cloud comes with an enterprise plan where you can
Okay.
just take a predefined Docker container that is already set up in a way that it can place it in your Kubernetes environment or whatever you have, boot it up there, and it
Okay.
would be isolated within that, right? And so you can point any local instances to that one, and so you get
Mhm.
the caching, but inside that, inside your own infrastructure.
Okay.
Because even the public cloud, even though it does end-to-end encryption and all that stuff, there's still obviously companies
Yeah.
that cannot do it, right? Even here in
Yeah.
Europe, there are specific situations where you cannot have it, like in data centers that are in the US, and like those type of
Mhm.
issues mostly, right? So
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
I can understand that. I used to work at Autodesk. It's a large engineering firm, and I worked on a project that was project management for like uh, people creating video games or movies. So like clients like Disney and stuff. And
yeah,
like I think Disney, like to your point about like private cloud, I think like Disney was like, yeah, we need private because like just their IP for like all their like, obviously the public cloud is secure, but like anything at some point
of course,
it will
yeah.
probably something will happen.
Yeah,
But
totally. Yeah, and
okay.
that's the main concern. That's why we actually from the very beginning we had always that on the side because we saw that coming. Because we have a lot of
Yeah.
experience consulting with those type of enterprise, and so you know kind of the problematics that might arise, right? Which is mainly
Yeah.
why we did that. And then again, like the
Yeah.
free plan is for like just us on the stream testing it out, and even like small projects, like you can totally use it there as well, right? Even if you're a small
Yeah.
company or whatever, or a company that says like I'm fine with having it on a public cloud, like I'm not
Yeah.
having any problems there. You can just run it, test it out until you hit the limits, and then
Yeah.
decide whether you want to increase or not, or just keep it
Yeah.
caching until like the 500 hours are consumed, right?
Yeah, no, for
And yeah,
sure.
and for the open source project, it's free completely. So if you happen
Yeah.
to use an open source project, just reach out to us and we can give you a coupon that kind of is unlimited. And so use it within an
Okay.
open source project. Go ahead. That's kind of like just because we are open source, we are an open source space. You want to kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, for
contribute
sure.
back to some degree if you want.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I do like the fact that there is a free tier for the cloud, sorry, for the distributed cloud caching, because like one as a developer, like trying out these things, because it's not just me as a developer. Like I might have side projects and I'd use it, but like a lot of people work at companies and they'd be like, oh hey, I tried out the free tier. This looks really compelling.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
we should, So it's
absolutely.
and I think a lot of tools I use these days, they do kind of offer the free tier, but I'm always kind of taken aback when there isn't a free tier. Not because I'm trying to get free stuff, but it's just like if
It's
if
harder
you
to
have to
experiment with, right?
exactly, So anyways, that's just like a hat tip to doing the free tier. Cool, cool. Yeah, we're almost at time here. I guess my last question is, and this has I'm more curious, like there's NX, which is a company, right? And then there's Narwhal. Like I'm curious, like
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how things all fit together there, and because
Yeah.
I know some people that used to work at Narwhal, I think, or no, maybe I'm mixing it with Wrangle, but basically Narwhal was doing consulting, I think, and then NX came about. I guess just curious about that.
Yeah, it's a valid question. It's a valid question. Because no, basically what is like NX, like now it's a company, right? Even right now,
Yeah.
from a legal perspective, it's still novel Incoterms, right? So it's still that novel
Okay.
technology Incoterms. And because that is the company that Victor and Jeff created to kind of create consulting in Angular and React space and build it up
Yeah.
over the years. And NX kind of was the side open source project
Okay.
to build up the monorepo, which we then at some point started using in those consulting projects. So it got more used and more popular and started growing on its own, basically, right? Because a lot of people don't know, but like up until almost half year ago, we just worked on NX on our 20% time,
Oh,
right? So we
okay.
had 4 days a week where we consulted with clients, often adopted the next there and used it actively, right? Sometimes it was also just like Angular
Okay.
React consulting type of work. And on Fridays, usually whatever your day was, you would hack on an X and like work on an open source project there, right?
Okay.
But then an
Gotcha.
X got so much use and so much popularity. Like we hit over 3 million downloads not so long ago, right? So it grew from 1 million last year, beginning of the year, I think, to 3 million at the end of the year. So in 1 year, like we saw like an extreme boost, and that's when we then took the decision basically to kind of go full in, right? Because obviously in this
Okay.
20% you can only do so much. And so if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to really invest in the idea, and we kind of believe in it, obviously, and so we want to push it. And so we started like looking for fundraising, and so we got an investment, and that allowed us now
Okay.
to kind of shift fully on just an X. And so that's
Okay.
why
Gotcha.
now what you see now are cylinder packages that might also disappear at some point potentially. But
Okay.
we're now moving the branding and everything to just an X, because otherwise people are
Okay.
confused, especially new ones that see like an
Yeah.
X and then they hear now they were like, what's the relation? What is going on there, right? And
Yeah.
so all of our branding right now just moves over, but we are in the transition, let's say it like that.
Okay.
Right? So you still see it pop up here and there, but at some
Okay.
point it should vanish, because that's the main goal basic right now.
Okay, cool. No, thanks for clarifying that. It was just, yeah, because it was something I was confused about.
Yeah, it's a very valid question. It comes up quite more often than you would think of.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got about my voice is cracking. We got about 5 minutes here, but there is a question from Mihai in the chat. They're saying, we've been doing monorepo Angular projects for some of our clients, but due to their corporate restrictions, we always had to do them using the standard Angular approach. No NX, no workspaces, no nothing, unfortunately. But I'm curious how easier it would be for me and my teams to be able to adopt all this. I'm not sure what they mean by the regular Angular way. Is that just using the Angular CLI, I guess?
Yeah, the Angular CLI has some sort of like built-in way where you can build a project locally and
Okay.
then link to it, but it's not really, it's very like kept at a high level, so they don't really go
Okay.
into the monorepo, but it could implement a monorepo scenario in that as well. But it's kind of from the X
Okay.
perspective, since it's not thought for that and not like optimized for that, it's kind of a bit cumbersome.
Okay.
And so I can totally empathize with what they mentioned, in the sense of like it's kind of difficult to do.
Okay.
I would be very curious like what the exact restrictions are, like why you cannot use an X, like with like,
Okay.
because it's MIT licensed open source in general, so it's like there's no legal licensing issues there if you want. But yeah, I would be very curious about that. If you want to migrate, the migration is something that we made very easy. So there is the command which you can run actually in an Angular CLI project that would transition you over to an NX monorepo automatically. So it's one command you run, and then you transition over, and then you kind of look at it and fix maybe some couple of things that might have not been transitioned properly, and then you should be good to go. So it's relatively low impact, I would say, in a sense. So it should be. Oh no,
Yeah.
third-party lives kind of restrictions. Yeah, then it becomes tough.
Yeah.
Like then
Yeah.
it becomes difficult, obviously.
Well, I guess still work with those clients, but try and find some clients that want to use NX.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, because we have also clients also in the banking area, right? Which like are known
Mhm.
for being very restrictive, like rightfully so, right? And so they also use an X. So it might need to go probably through some specific approval processes and stuff, like security checks and whatever. So
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay. No, that's cool. Yeah, I dropped links to where people can find you and NX. I'm just going to drop it in the chat again, unless you. All right, yeah. Let me just copy it. Yuri's going to be continuing tomorrow on their stream. Basically, going to be talking about, for folks that joined the stream late, we were talking about how NX has standalone app support. But the migration path from going from standalone to a monorepo, when you think it's time. It's a manual process right now. They are working on automating this, and I think what you said, Yuri, is you're gonna go through like what that manual process is tomorrow, and then like just to talk about what people
Yeah.
might run into, I
I'm
guess.
doing the pre-experimentation of how we can then automate it. So I'm going basically
Okay.
live through like what are the steps that you do right now and how potentially we could like automate that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just drop your Twitch there. Cool. Yeah, so definitely check that out tomorrow. Yeah, aside from that, I think we're like pretty much on time. I gotta say, like, I really enjoyed the conversation today. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here that I wasn't aware of, so lots for me to explore, and for folks as well who are watching the stream, hopefully. Um, before we go, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say. Like, obviously, you're streaming tomorrow. Any other things? I think you said you were working on a talk. I saw you post you finished
oh yeah.
recording it tonight. Yeah.
I delivered that one last minute, like concluded
Okay.
basically just hours before the stream today. Yeah, I'm going to speak first actually in Zurich at
Okay.
VoxConf and then at QCon London, which is I think it's around 28th of March, 27, 28 in
Okay.
London.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone happens to be around there, definitely chime in,
Cool.
come by.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank everybody for checking out the stream today. I'm going to drop the schedule if folks want to see who else is coming on in the next little while. And aside from that, thanks again, Yuri. If you don't mind just staying on for a sec, and
Sure.
everybody
Thank
else,
you.
I will see you next week.